Alright. Did you like Logan Lucky?
Yeah,
I liked Logan Lucky.
it's pretty tight.
That was a good movie.
I'm about to get naked. So no bacon. I said no bacon.
You Logans mustn't be as simple-minded as people say.
People say that.
Would you give me my arm, please?
Is it this one?
I don't really know much of Peter Soldering Iron's work.
That's not what he's called.
I don't really know much of that guy's work.
He did the Ocean's movies. Logan Lucky is not just actually funny, it's almost like a comedy version of Hell or High Water, where it's actually a really tight heist movie that is not this highfalutin, almost fantasy concept of thievery, but it's actually kind of grounded and realistic, and it portrays these characters from a... Taking a right?
We're going to the Sparrow.
Oh yeah, that would be a lot easier. So yeah, the story is basically a pretty simple setup. You got two brothers bearing the last name Logan and a sister with the last name Logan, and they're considered unlucky people. A lot of them, they're having some struggles. Adam Driver plays is he the older brother? I think he's
I thought it was the younger.
I think he's the younger brother. A couple of tours in Iraq and lost a hand, and people make fun of him because he also is Adam Driver, so he talks weird.
I'm Adam Driver. He was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Oh, Adam Driver actually was?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
He's good, though. He's like a good actor.
Yeah, I'm glad to see him being able to prove himself as an actor.
Because I like him in...
Girls.
I liked him in Girls.
Yeah, apparently he was like the redeeming quality of that show.
When I watched it. I mean, I don't think Girls is bad. I just think it's kind of indulgent.
But Channing Tatum has already proven that he can act in spades, and he does it again here. Most importantly to me is Daniel Craig, because he just got paid the bajillions of dollars to return to a role of James Bond. But as it turns out, he's actually a good actor.
I am incarcerated.
Yeah, we got a plan to get you out.
He can do things other than be grumbly and grunting and stoic. For somebody who's been starring in that action series for the last 10 years as a character that used to have a lot of charm, but his version was the one that made it almost kind of boring.
He said a couple of controversial things regarding his relationship with the Bond character.
Oh, like how he actually wanted to kill himself over it?
Well, because when he was asked about doing another one, he was hot off the set of Spectre.
Yeah, which was a hot mess of a movie
Which
in
is
the first place.
People always equate completing a movie to
You gonna do another one?
well, they equate it to giving birth essentially, because you put all of this work into this project, and then the immediate question for press and people is are you gonna do another one?
So yeah, I like that Daniel Craig gets to portray an actual character here. For once, he plays the convict Joe Bang. He's kind of like a bizarre dude. And so are his brothers, one of which is not Bill Hader and one of which is not Donald Gleason.
Oh my God.
Just a couple of character side actors. And then you got Katie Holmes as the ex-wife, and I can't remember the name of the girl who plays the sister Millie.
I really don't know who that was.
Crap. So all the performances in Logan Lucky are really solid, but the reason I compare it to Hell or High Water as well is not just the aesthetic and the actual subject material. Right, the location, the subject material in terms of the heist and the character types, but it actually is a really tight script, and it's really well edited, and it makes for a pretty concise, well-paced story. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish that more people had seen it this past weekend, because it only made $8 million. And
I thought it was a better heist movie than Baby Driver.
yeah, and I like Baby Driver. But, you know, when I start reflecting on it a little too hard, I'm like, I think that Baby Driver does have its flaws. I think that the best performer in Baby Driver is Edgar Wright as a director and choreographer.
Yeah. I like it less the more I think about it.
Yeah. But Logan Lucky, there's a lot to kind of pick apart. You know, because there's actually strong characterization in there. There's nice little visual cues. There's, you know, good scoring.
Good, like, dynamic characters.
Yeah, the characters have chemistry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, it's basically like another Ocean's movie, but with a different cast of characters. And as a result, I actually think I kind of like it more than those. Dude, what the fuck are you doing? Actually, that's what you're doing?
I'm just looking at him. Like,
Just fucking go.
yeah, well, you have a fucking giant F-150. So I guess the proper response is to let him go.
Anyway, you know what else gets me hot-headed other than asshole baby boomer drivers is when really bad movies do really well compared to the exceptional ones. You know what I'm talking about?
A lot of things. A lot of movies.
What's the most recent example?
Rogue One.
No, that was over almost a year ago, actually. No, I'm talking about the Hitman's Bodyguard.
You about done? Okay, on three. 1.
My bad.
What am I gonna do? Anyway, so the Hitman's Bodyguard is where do I even start? It's produced by China. It stars 2 A-list American actors. It has almost kind of the makings of a generic action movie, kind of one of those, you know, your run-of-the-mill post-Taken action movie, where it's trying to homage the old ones and it just follows like this really dumb formula with Russian villains. But it tries to do a twist, right? It's like, oh no, it's a buddy movie! Oh, we got a guy who's a bodyguard, and the guy he's guarding is a hitman, and he used to try to kill him. Oh, isn't that funny? The movie's not funny. It's actually really depressing and sad, and there are very few moments of the movie itself are actual jokes, and I don't know if it's a movie that is supposed to be a comedy and failed at coming across as a comedy, or if it's just an action movie with an identity crisis. So yeah, basically, and not only that, but it wastes a lot of other talent as well. You have Salma Hayek as Samuel Jackson's imprisoned wife, and I guess she was imprisoned for... Yeah, okay, merging. What are you gonna do? I guess she was just imprisoned as an accomplice because, you know, he kills a crap ton of people. Sam Jackson himself says motherfucker a lot, like he does in every other movie.
So over Sam Jackson.
Why are you over Sam Jackson?
Because Sam Jackson doesn't even try to be anything other than Sam Jackson.
This is true, but that's because nobody asks him to do anything other than be Sam Jackson.
Because he's commissioned strictly by the fact that he's Sam Jackson.
Like, basically, it could have been a Capital One commercial, and I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference other than Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. So yeah, basically, the plot of that movie is another wasted talent, Gary Oldman as the villain, and it opens with him being this very dark, genocidal maniac. Actually, the subplot is ethnic cleansing fascist pig, and he's in the middle of this nonsensical trial with the UN, I think? And, yeah, so basically one of the witnesses to his crimes against the world is Samuel Jackson's bodyguard character. And, I guess he just needs to be escorted from point A to point B, and it basically gets compromised because you know, there's a mole inside of the, you know, whatever, British intelligence, I guess. It's
Gary
really lame.
Gary Oldman's the villain.
Gary Oldman's the villain, and he is absolutely wasted. He only says like a couple of lines. He gives people orders, and then he eats some food, and then he sits in a trial. And then there's a couple of shots of him pointing guns at villagers.
He's a good villain, though. 'Cause
He could play a good villain as long as he's got something to work with.
Leon, the Professional, or whatever.
Yeah,
It's like one of my favorite action movies.
yeah.
And he's really good.
Yeah, but he's definitely not past just doing a movie for a paycheck. That's the thing. And this is the most recent example of that. So yeah, that goes awry. The only character that is able to get Sam Jackson out without being, you know, absolutely murdered is I can't remember the actress's name or the character's name, but she plays Elektra on the Daredevil show. And the only person she can call on is her ex-boyfriend, Ryan Reynolds, who is kind of in a rut of his career because he used to be as he self-proclaimed, AAA bodyguard. And then he had one mistake with a client in the prologue of the film, and now he's at the bottom of the rung, so he's got to skate his way back to the top. So yeah, it's just a stupid baseline road trip movie across Europe over the course of like a couple of days, where they're basically just driving, and then they get interrupted by villains, and then they kind of have a lame shootout, and then they keep going and they tell each other backstory, and then you kind of repeat the cycle, except somewhere in there is like a really lame boat chase. And the action in the movie, oh, you know what the name of I don't know the name of the director, but was I supposed to get off there? No, it's Harwich. The director of this movie is the one who did Expendables 3, which is another one of those action movies, but is obviously the least liked of the Expendables movies, if that means anything, because they're all bad. Basically, this movie tried really hard to do a similar thing to what Deadpool did, right? The action isn't always the focus. It kind of stops a moment to give you backstory to the characters, except you got 2 or 3 characters that it is doing that with. And it almost feels like an anime arc, where you have these characters that are stopping and going on this journey from one location to the next, and in between the, you know, long-winded action scenes that don't really mean a whole lot, they, you know, give these really somber backstory moments. So
Yeah.
yeah, the only thing is that the Hitman's Bodyguard was also made with really cheap CGI and really boring action choreography and action editing. So like there's a there's a motorcycle chase / boat chase with villains in the van, and each part has individual stunts where I could kind of envision the actual stunt work standalone from what's in the final movie and be like, all right, they kind of did a cool stunt there, but they didn't capture any of it in any way that is engaging, and they also edited it together to make it even less engaging than that. So it's like 3 minutes too long. It's not interesting. The only thing that's even remotely interesting was this standout moment where there's some kind of character reveal. The spoiler alert if we care. The Sam Jackson Hitman character is the one that killed the one client that Ryan Reynolds couldn't save, and that's what got him, back down at the bottom of the barrel. And when that's revealed at the hour and 10 mark, Ryan Reynolds just storms out, and then Sam Jackson's fighting people on his own, and Reynolds is just sitting down in this outdoor bar, just complaining at the camera, but it's supposed to be at a bartender, but it's just the bartender's reaction shots. Is it this exit?
No, the next
one. Yeah, and then he's literally, Ryan Reynolds is talking to a camera because he's not even really at a bar. He's in costume in front of a green screen, and behind him on the green screen, and this compositing is really glaringly obvious when you see it, it's just Sam Jackson doing a car chase around like the park square, like behind him complaining, and then it just awkwardly jumps into another action scene. So it's almost like it was a weird transition done in reshoots. So yeah, there's just a lot of distracting decisions made in that movie. So, and then there was one moment towards the end where they actually tried to do a raid fight, and it actually was done to the same effect that Atomic Blonde did it towards the end of that movie. Remember that action movie in that action scene in the stairwell where it's like continuous and it's kind of following her around?
I remember for sure.
They did that in this movie, but really cheap, where they would like kind of do like cuts, like they would zoom in on somebody's back and then cut away.
That's
Not
so stupid.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be like this hardware store, and he has to like choke the guy out, and to the unassuming viewer, they're gonna be like, oh, that's actually kind of a cool idea. But to me, I'm watching that, and I'm like, I see what you're doing, I see what you're trying to duplicate, and it doesn't work. A for effort, but you're it's too little too late at this point in the movie.
Not even A for effort, probably.
Yeah, no, it's like, well, right. What if that was in like the first 10 minutes? I would have said A for effort, but because there was like, it's a little less than 2 hours, but it feels like it's 3, and that was maybe at like the three-quarter mark of the runtime. You know, like before all the resolution. Anyway, it was super lame. It's amazing though how you can have 2 hours of your life feel like it's being just like stretched out in a painfully long instance, and then you can have something like Logan Lucky where it goes by actually really quickly. Yeah, like that movie has really quippy, zany pacing, and there's always something important going on, and there's always something at risk for the characters. And even though the characters expect something bad to go down towards the beginning, they set that up. You know, it comes as a surprise as to what they actually are. The only time that Logan Lucky felt like it was slowing down a bit too much was that final act. My only complaint is like the little FBI investigation towards the end that I won't ruin, because the outcome's actually quite interesting.
Yeah,
but
it's like the worst part.
Yeah, but I kind of see they were trying to remove the perspective from the main characters to kind of give a scope
for a reason, though, because there was one person.
Yeah, there was one really bad acting choice in that.
Yeah. She was like, for some reason, just so bad.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not really anybody's fault specifically. It's just kind of like one bad decision, one performance, and it has to be consistent. So, but man, I just, it makes me sad when something as good as Logan Lucky is just buried by something that's so generic. I'm sure in the case of the Hitman's Bodyguard that China's gonna love it. When on Letterboxd, I did give Logan Lucky a solid 4 stars, and that's higher than I would give any other movie in the Ocean's trilogy. I'd have to go look at the backlog of Soderbergh's other films and see.
I thought Logan Lucky was a solid 4-star film.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That was good. I liked it a lot.
Oh no, what are we doing?
When you're looking at the...
Am I going straight?
Yeah, when you're being comparative, and you're looking at what else is out right now. It's like just a lot of schlock and bullshit.
Yeah.
Disingenuous, artificial bullshit.
I mean, that's the thing.
Logan Lucky had charisma, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, Channing Tatum's well known, but he's not a big name box office draw in the same way that Samuel Jackson is. And Ryan Reynolds is there now because of Deadpool alone, and just stupid and generic wins out over something that is original and concise and entertaining. Yeah, time and time again. So, if you are watching this and Logan Lucky is still in the theater, definitely go see it, because it's fucking great. It's a good movie, and it deserves that box office cash more than the other thing. So, cool. I'm gonna get some ice cream because I'm feeling down after my bad experience. Oh dear. Am I going? I'm going that way. Yes. Yeah. Okay, come along, Mr. Chrysler. Fucking pill-looking car. That guy's hauling ass. Thank you for driving a hybrid and hauling ass. So it's been a while since we saw Atomic Blonde. But we saw Atomic Blonde. How'd you feel about Atomic Blonde?
Lorraine Broughton, expert in intelligence collection and hand-to-hand combat.
Agent Gascoigne was killed last night. Did you know him?
Enough to say hello.
He had an atomic bomb of information. Find out who's hunting our operatives, and trust no one.
I think I liked it a little more than you did.
I'm somebody who doesn't really like John Wick, so...
Yes. Interesting. The director of Atomic Blonde is actually a peer of the director of the John Wick films, or at least he was a co-director of the sequel, if I understand correctly.
And I really love action films.
Yes.
Like real action.
Yeah, so like we have a pretty high standard for action movies and action direction. I find that Atomic Blonde's fault is that it was very engrossed in the spy thriller aspect of the film, and therefore majority of the film, despite how it was sold as an action movie, is actually very much a plotting, stealthy, Nikita homage, a very, 80s pulpy, high color value, comic book like, because it's actually based on a black and white comic book. Looks nothing like and has almost nothing to do with that comic, but it is an adaptation of its story. So it has a lot of grit, and it's got a lot of concepts and a lot of characterization, and those parts work.
I thought there were a couple parts that were some of the strongest in American action.
There was a lot of it that took a little too long to get to what it was going for. And then there was, when it actually got to some of those points, you were like, oh wow, this is actually pretty cool.
In my opinion, I think a lot of people would disagree with this.
Yeah.
But, the segment of the movie that kind of is like this sprawling staircase infiltration tracking shot sequence that kind of bleeds into the third act.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like the beginning of the third act or something. I think that altogether, I would...
that was like in the moment in the theater where you kind of woke up a little bit, where you stopped being bored.
I was a little asleep for the movie because I just wasn't very compelled by what they were saying. It just seemed like very kind of like stock, negotiations.
So a lot of it is when you're telling something like a spy movie, and this is very much the reason why it's hard for people to get into something like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. A lot of the Cold War espionage is pawn movement, right? A lot of it is information trade and infiltration and figuring out who's double agents, who's triple agents, who's the leak, and how is it do you actually complete your task with as little physicality as possible. In this particular case, Charlize Theron plays a agent of, I think it was MI6.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but basically she plays a woman who is an agent and is tasked to go into the conflict of East versus West Berlin just, as it's about to fall, the wall. So it's set in 1989, and she has a contact who used to work for MI6 and has gone defective, I believe, and he's played by James McAvoy. And his methods are very different from hers. He's very immersive in the environment. She just, is very straightforward, and she doesn't necessarily stick to the rule book, but she sticks to what needs to be done. And he just kind of gets off the beaten path. And so they butt heads quite a bit. But a lot of it has to do with this, it was like a watch, and the watch contains secrets of, I don't know, nuclear annihilation or some weird story point like that. MacGuffin information. The problem is that a lot of the movie is spent chasing the MacGuffin when they realize that the information of the MacGuffin is being held by this guy that's been around all along. And then the conflict turns into how to keep the information away from the KGB, period. So, yeah, it's the story is one that we've seen before, but unlike my complaining about action story beats being absolutely generic in the Hitman's Bodyguard, this one feels like it's being derivative in a way that feels inspired in some regard, at least from the storytelling aspect. So, and I thought that the color grading, the set design for something that's supposed to be like, gritty Berlin, Russian snow and concrete, like there's actually a lot of vibrant color going on in this movie, and it's very much that kind of like that neon blues and pinks and greens, and like everybody kind of has this like fantastical imagination of like 80s nightclubs and crap like that, and it's the ugly side of all that too.
It was very Nicholas Winding Refn inspired.
Yeah. So.
Who I think is kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, Drive is great, but his other films...
Save for maybe Drive and Bronson.
But do you have any particular feelings on Atomic Blonde's, like, action style or directing style, or
I was
how it
largely
edited?
Unimpressed up until a certain point.
But were you more impressed with it than you were with John Wick? In those moments, other than the ones that you genuinely liked, and the ones that you thought were just non-impressive.
Yeah.
Because I certainly feel that way.
The one, segment that I was, impressed by, which I said before was, the tracking shot stairwell sequence, which is
an action shot tracking scene, a tracking shot action sequence that is basically blows any complement of Children of Men out of the water and basically makes that movie irrelevant now.
I guess.
But you didn't, because we were just talking about, bland action choreography before, or we do it every day.
I think it's a step above most of its competition in Hollywood.
Yeah, for American produced
including
ones.
John Wick. Part of my problem with gung fu or movies that include gun-based choreography is that it takes away the element of mortality for me, and it just contributes to feelings of invincibility.
Yeah.
Charlize Theron's character in this sequence felt super vulnerable and not invincible.
She felt vulnerable in a way that, John McClane does in Die Hard.
Yeah, whereas, to me, Keanu Reeves, I get that he was so devoted, to John Wick as a character and, did the choreography and training and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I admire that a lot.
Well, it's not unlike The Matrix, right? Where, you see these characters with these superb, non-realistic abilities at all, and you're like, okay, what danger are they actually in?
I just when I see John Wick shooting up a nightclub or some shit, and he's just moving this fucking gun around fucking crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
Ducking and covering and stuff like that. It just feels so like hollow to me, for one reason or another, and a lot of people would argue the other way around. I mean, that's fine. But to me, like, if I'm watching somebody contact fighting, whether it be with fists or swords, it's like, it feels like an extension of emotionality.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like just that intimacy of combat allows characters to grow in the fights. Whereas, like, nothing feels intimate about gun violence or like it's growing a character. It just feels like senseless schlock, and sometimes that's what people want.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just what people want in an action movie. It's just like no bullshit, no funny business, all violence.
There's
all
really
action.
actually through Atomic Blonde, there's really not that much gunplay to speak of. A lot of it is
right.
hand-fist
It's a
contact
pretty good
fighting.
pretty good balance, but I think just that one scene alone elevated to me what was otherwise a pretty like unengaging movie.
Right.
You know. So, and then it continued to not really engage me after that point, much to my dismay.
Well, that scene goes on for a bit.
But it went on for a while.
That's like a 10-minute scene, because that starts from an escape
like,
scene, turns into a stairwell fight, turns into a like weird resourceful bedroom fight, and then it turns into a car chase.
It was a sprawling action sequence with a lot of different set pieces and a lot of good use of camera tricks and not like overzealous like CGI enhancements or anything like that.
Yes.
Save for like some blood and stuff like that.
Definitely.
So,
I don't know. I liked it. My only complaint was there's too many endings. It could have ended like 15 minutes before it actually did, and I would have been satisfied. And instead they kept trying to spin it into all these other twists going on, and I'm like, all right.
I agree. Yeah.
None of this was telegraphed all that well. It's just kind of happening, unless I missed it entirely.
Yeah, it went on for a little long. But I, you know, John Wick is like not something I enjoyed as an action fanatic.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people just want to have a Keanu Reeves come back. A lot of people are fascinated by the concept of gun fu, and it's like, if you're gonna watch it as like a sport, sure, okay, but it needs to be directed in an interesting way, and it needs to add some kind of gravitas to the character and the fight scene.
I never feel like John Wick's incentive, other than his dog dying, is just like, I don't feel like that allows, it's no sense of urgency is stressed particularly well in John Wick.
Yeah.
Like even what's happening in Atomic Blonde is like, it feels more like credible.
Sure.
To me, you know. But I feel like that's where a lot of action films are lacking. Contemporary action movies that aren't maybe from the East are lacking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and obviously the comparison always comes up, like The Raid, right? Where you have like this physical brutality, but I mean, really all that adds is the hand-to-hand combat choreography, as well as like the gore as a result. You know, it's kind of like
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, I thought that it would be at least worth talking about, because that's actually still in the theaters as well, and is also significantly better than The Hitman's Bodyguard. So
I would place Atomic Blonde a little higher probably
than John Wick.
Wow, I was gonna say Hitman's Bodyguard probably.
Well, you didn't see The Hitman's Bodyguard. I would definitely put it higher than I think Atomic Blonde's like a solid 3-star movie, right? It's like, you know, that is one that is actually like one of those I would consider, all right, it's an average action movie. You could throw it on. It's got some cool visuals and there's some stuff going on. And it's like, if you're super into the idea of like a hard-boiled, you know, Cold War era spy thriller, like you've been craving one of those, definitely put it on. So anyway, my battery's dying. I'm glad that we got to talk about movies a little bit.
Stuck in traffic.
And we're stuck in traffic. And I'm gonna go grocery shopping and buy some fruit. So, thanks for tuning in.